All right, so I wanted to do a college football Big Ten 2023 over-under preview, going team by team, schedule breakdown. Do I think this team's going to win over or under a certain amount of games? You can see there's a little analytical projected wins with all of these teams, and then their actual win totals. Ohio State, Michigan, both sitting at 10.5, Penn State at 9.5, Wisconsin, Iowa, and so far on down. To add a little context to this, you can take a look at returning talent. Obviously, Ohio State not returning their quarterback, so that's going to hurt. But still, other positions, they're in the green. Michigan returns a bunch. Wisconsin returns a good amount. So does Penn State. Just looking at this, it looks like the rich are getting richer in the Big Ten in 2023 with all of the top teams returning a bunch. You also do have Rutgers maybe having a decent year, returning 70% of their production. And then this is a full analytical projection based on the East and West with Ohio State right now the number 2 overall team. They are the betting favorite to win the Big Ten, 58% chance to go to their conference championship. Michigan, the number 4 overall team in the nation right now according to analytics. And then you do have the big 3 with Penn State also inside the top 10. After that, the Big Ten East, really bad. Michigan State at 45. Maryland, I really do not agree with that. I think Maryland's probably top 40 with Tagovailoa returning, but they're still not a top 25 team. And then Indiana and Rutgers, I would put Indiana below Rutgers, but either way, it's anecdotal at that point. And then you've got Wisconsin. I mean, the Big Ten West, it is what it is. One team inside of the top 25, Wisconsin at 19. Iowa, we all know what Iowa is. They're always good on defense. They're terrible on offense. They're very boring, but they're kind of fun because they're boring, if that makes sense. I think Illinois is going to be terrible this year. I just feel like they're going to come down to earth and go 4-8. Minnesota, there's a lot of hype around Minnesota. We'll see. Nebraska with Matt Rule. I don't even know what to make of Nebraska anymore. Purdue, and then Northwestern. Northwestern dealing with all those issues with Pat Fitzgerald. But guys, we're going to take a look, go through some teams. So the first team here, it is Illinois. So Illinois' over-under is 6.5. And I'm going to kind of break it down. Will they win over 6.5 games or under? Toledo, I think they win. At Kansas, I would say it's a toss-up. I'm going to say they lose. Penn State, they're going to lose. FAU, they're probably going to win. I'll say okay, so now they're 2-2. At Purdue, I'll say they'll lose 2-3. Nebraska at home, they win. At Maryland, that's a toss-up. I would probably say they lose. Lose to Wisconsin. At Minnesota, probably a loss. They beat Indiana. At Iowa is probably a loss. And then versus Northwestern. I'll tell you, that's a very easy schedule. But still, I'm not in on Illinois this year. They do not have that talented of a roster. Feels like they're going to come back down to earth. Maybe they'll prove me wrong because it is a very easy schedule. It's the Big Ten West, but this is a team, I think, 6-6, 5-7. They will be under that 6.5 projected win total. The next team we're looking at, it is Penn State. Penn State's over-under sitting at 9.5. This is a great schedule for Penn State. West Virginia at home, so easy. 7:30 prime time, breaking in your new young quarterback. This is going to be a blowout. Penn State's going to win this game very easily, and there's going to be a lot of hype behind them after they win it. Delaware's a free win at Illinois. That's a game you got to win if you're Penn State. Iowa at home, that is their whiteout game, so you would assume probably competitive, probably fun, but in the end they win by a touchdown. At Northwestern, you think very probable they start off 5-0. A random game with UMass. UMass is always one of the worst teams in college football. At Ohio State is going to be brutal. They're going to be underdogs, probably a loss. Indiana at home is a win. At Maryland, you would have to assume is a win, but Maryland's, they're trying to start up a little rivalry there with Tagovailoa returning. I don't know. Maybe they make it interesting. Penn State versus Michigan, that is a huge game for them. Very important for Penn State that they win that game. We'll see. Probably going to be a toss-up. Michigan might even be slight favorites. Rutgers, and then at Michigan State. So if the over-under is 9.5, you would figure at Ohio State is probably a loss. Michigan is probably a toss-up. But after that, I'm really liking the over. I mean, at Michigan State. Well, that game's at Ford Field. Yeah, what a weird thing they did there at the Michigan. Penn State really lucked out, that game being at Ford Field with Michigan State. There's going to be no energy for that game. That game is the Black Friday, too. Yeah, they're going to beat Michigan State, but that's just a bad game. Either way, I do think Penn State will go 10-2, and they will be over the 9.5. The next team is Iowa, so their win total right now sitting at 7.5. Utah State at home. What's the over-under on that? 10 points at Iowa State. That'll be another great game. No, I think they should beat Iowa State this year, but it's going to be like 13-10. Western Michigan, they should probably start 3-0 with that schedule. At Penn State, probably a loss. Michigan State at home, that's a game you got to win. They get Purdue at home, that's another game you probably got to win. At Wisconsin, that's a winnable game, but it's tough. They get Minnesota at home, that'll be big. Their bye week, and then they have that game at Wrigley Field versus Northwestern. They'll win that game probably 5-3 in honor of it being Wrigley Field, an MLB score. They'll probably get a safety or something. Rutgers, this schedule, dude. Rutgers and Illinois at home. They got to go over. This schedule, think about this. Utah State at home, Western Michigan at home, MSU at home, Purdue at home, Minnesota at home, neutral site Northwestern, Rutgers at home, Illinois at home. Wow. Yeah, they could very easily get to 8-4 and get over that 7.5 there. The next team is Michigan State. So Michigan State win total 5.5. It's a tradition like any other. Michigan State starting their season on Friday night against a crappy team, and they're doing it again, so that'll be a win for them. Richmond, they face the Richmond Spiders, so they'll be 2-0. That game's at 3:30, and then they have that weird game with Washington. That'll be a big game for the Big Ten if MSU can somehow win it. If I'm MSU, I'm actually very excited for that game against Washington. I understand Washington returning everyone. They've got good players, but I don't know, man. It's not like Washington is really going to out-talent you. That is a winnable game for Michigan State, and that could really kickstart their season. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but if you want to be optimistic, it's not like this is not like Alabama or Ohio State or Michigan coming in here, folks. The talent is comparable, even though I do agree Washington should win that game. That'll be a fun game, Washington. But why is that game on Peacock? Like, what are we doing? That game is only streaming. That is crazy. And then they have Maryland at home. That's winnable. I think they lose to Iowa on the road. At Rutgers, honestly, they might lose that game. No, they should beat you. You would think they'd beat Rutgers. Michigan at home, the rivalry game. It's always close, and they get them at home. I don't know. We'll see. At Minnesota, that's tough. Minnesota should be decent. Nebraska at home, that's like a 50-50 game. I'd probably give the edge to MSU. At Ohio State is brutal. That's a 7:30 game. That's crazy. Ohio State hosting a 7:30 game in November. At Indiana, that's, you would think, a win. And then versus Penn State. So the over-under for them, for Michigan State, 5.5. Well, they're probably going to lose to Washington. They're probably going to lose to Iowa. Lose to Michigan, that's 3 losses. Lose to Minnesota, that's 4 losses. Lose to Ohio State. Yeah, I think they're probably a 6-6, 5-7 team. I think they're under. Oh wait, what's their over under was 5.5. Yeah, I don't know, honestly, with Michigan State. I'd probably say under, but barely. The next team, it is Michigan. So Michigan's win total sitting at 10.5. So they would have to lose 2 games to go under. To go over, they would have to go 11-1. And, the whole story with Jim Harbaugh facing the suspension, the 4 games, East Carolina at home, UNLV at home, Bowling Green at home, Rutgers at home. You've got to be kidding me. So, yes, those are the games that Jim Harbaugh might miss. Maybe it'll get appealed or something down to 2 games. I don't know. But either way, that's a joke of a schedule. At Nebraska, Nebraska's just not a fun place to play, man. It really isn't. They're probably going to win that game, but it's an annoying place to travel to. At Minnesota, so back-to-back games, maybe a little sneaky there at Minnesota after Nebraska, and then they get Indiana at home, and then they're on the road again at Michigan State. But you would figure they would beat Michigan State. It is a rivalry. It's going to be emotional. It's on the road. They get Purdue at home. That should be a fairly easy win. When's the last time Purdue's been to the Big House? That's a weird game right there. They're at Penn. This is actually kind of a, I'm not going to say it's not a tough schedule because the non-conference is so bad, but I don't know. At Minnesota is a sneaky tough game. At Penn State's tough. Is that seriously a Big Noon game? Dude, Big Noon. I thought Big Noon was getting disbanded. Big Noon has ruined college football, folks. Penn State has to play at noon against Michigan. I thought they were not doing that anymore. Didn't CBS take over the Big Ten? It's just sad to see these games get thrown on at like 7 a.m. in the morning. At Maryland, I don't know, that's an annoying game if you're Michigan. Ohio State had that set up last year where they were at Maryland and then they had Michigan the next week, and now Michigan has it at Maryland and then versus Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, I think it's 50-50 on if they beat Ohio State. It's just really impossible to judge that game. I know everyone's going to be saying, you know, how would you pick against Michigan? Ohio State has a new quarterback. But guys, you have to understand the context. At the end of the season, Ohio State, Kyle McCord's going to have 11 starts by that point. You're not, you know, he's going to be seasoned. So Michigan, I think Michigan goes 10-2 and they go under the 10.5. Next, we have Ohio State. Ohio State also at 10.5. Start with kind of a weird game at Indiana. I mean, Indiana is just horrific. Ohio State sitting 27.5-point favorites. They face Youngstown State, the Penguins. What's the spread on that game? So there's a little fun fact about the FCS game, that Youngstown State game. There will not be a point spread until Saturday morning. And I'm guessing the point spread for that game might be like 56.5. I would imagine Ohio State's probably going to win that game like 63-7, but we'll see. Western Kentucky, that's a fun little matchup. And then at Notre Dame, so there's the big one right there. At Notre Dame on the road, the Buckeyes with an early bye. That'll be a huge game. Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, who's ever starting. You know, you would think Ohio State would have the talent advantage, but Sam Hartman, Notre Dame, that's going to be a very tough game, even though Ohio State will be favorites. Maryland at home, you got to win that game. At Purdue, you just pray it's, good Lord, please, that better not be a night game. If that's a night game, uh-oh. Penn State at home, please not Big Noon. Please, no. Make that a 3:30 game on CBS. It'll be way better. Trust me. That Ohio State-Penn State game, there's two options. 3:30 CBS, 7:30 ABC. Those are options. We are removing the chance that game's going to be on Big Noon. It's not going to happen. At Wisconsin, oh, is that game seriously at 7:30? That's not good news for Ohio State. Yeah, NBC took that game. That's not good. At Rutgers, that's a free win. MSU, that's a free win. Minnesota's not bad, but you would think that should be a free win. And then at Michigan. So Ohio State, man, that's a tough schedule. At Notre Dame, are they going to go over under the 10.5 mark? I think they probably go 10-2. I'm going to say under. The next team, it is Wisconsin. So Wisconsin, their over-under win total, 8.5. Buffalo, that's an easy win. At Washington State, I'm pretty confident they're going to win that game. Georgia Southern, so they should start 3-0. At Purdue, that'll be a big game for Luke Fickell. You got to win it if you're Wisconsin and you're serious. They get Rutgers at home, Iowa at home, at Illinois, Ohio State at home, at Indiana. I mean, yeah, this is a schedule. I can see them at either 8-4 or 9-3, but I am going to trust Luke Fickell, and I'm going to say 9-3. They go over. We're just going to kind of rapid fire through some of these. Actually, you know what? Let's just go back to look and see which ones we didn't get, because this video is going on long enough. So the ones I didn't talk about, Minnesota, their win total is 7.5. Yeah, I would not bet on that either way. Nebraska's win total is 6.5. I would say probably under. I think Nebraska's probably a 6-6, 5-7 team. Purdue at 5.5. I'd go under on Purdue, but we'll see. Rutgers sitting at 3.5. I'd go over on Rutgers, but it's the Big Ten East. It's tough. Northwestern at 3.5. It's tough. You got to go under on Northwestern with their situation. And then Indiana 3.5. That's another team you have to go under on, being in the Big Ten East. But either way, guys, that's kind of my breakdown on the Big Ten over under win totals. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.